Story 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home. Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Welcome back to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, episode 30. Before we get started with this week's episode of Brad Ritter, I just want to apologize for the last 2 weeks' episodes are released with an editing error. They have both since been corrected, but I know you guys have a choice where you spend your time, and I know that it's valuable, and I want to make sure I continue to respect that time, and errors make that time frustrated when you want to listen to what the episode says, and it's not there. So for that, I apologize. I realize I've let you guys down as listeners, and I accept that I will step forward and try to resolve those issues that made those happen and commit to releasing a better podcast in the future. Today's episode with Brad Ritter is a very good one. I won't go into a lot of detail before we get started because I really just want to get you guys into this show. And with that, let's get this show started. What happens when you've never been truly tested by life? If we've never experienced severe illness, tragedy, death, or even war, how do we know if we have mental toughness to face adversity and persevere in life? Today, I have one of my close friends from the Dad Ed online community I'm a part of, Brad Ritter. In his 30s, he was all by definition a success. He had a big house, a great marriage, healthy kids, and a rock-solid job. But he felt something was missing. He had never been truly tested by life. He wanted to find out what he was made of. It was time to shake things up and get uncomfortable. Brad talks about how he endured SEAL Fit Course training, the world's premier training event for foregoing mental toughness. He also talks about his Dad Ed Alliance community that he's part of and named Fight Club. And now he has helped the men in his group develop and grow. Other things to know about Brad: he's 39 years old. He's been married for 13 years, 2 boys, a boy and a girl. Haley is 8 and Brody is 5. He is a consultant by trade and author and life coach by night. He's getting ready to launch School of Grit book on January 1st, 2020. And he is a president and founder of Operation Own Your Life, a company focused on helping veterans craft what he calls a desired end state where they can take their life to a different level than they're currently at. Brad, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Ben. It's a pleasure, man.
Go ahead and describe your life right now and any gaps that intro you want to add to us.
Any gaps, huh? My life is awesome, dude. Right now, I'm just in a really good place when I look at where I am now compared to where I was even 5 years ago. It's just been an amazing trip, and nothing's perfect, right? That's life. Life's hard. We're gonna have curveballs thrown our way and different obstacles, but at the end of the day, it's just important to take that big picture view. And I try to do that. I actually try to do that daily with my own family. And it's great. I mean, I really cherish and try to cherish every day, man.
So not being a veteran and now having all these superpowers to move your life forward and have mental toughness, why did you pick veterans to point your lessons learned to help them along the way?
Great question, man. So I am a civilian, and why I'm choosing to work with the veteran community, there's several different reasons. But if I go back to when I was getting out of high school, I verbally committed to my best friend at the time that we were going to join the Army together, and he was going to try to be a Ranger. I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Let's do it. And I chickened out, man. I got scared and I didn't pull the trigger. And my life took me another path. I went to college, and I wouldn't trade any of that, for the world, because I'm here where I am now, right? I was just talking to you about, life being good. And so one reason I wanted to focus on the veteran community is just I've always felt one of my life's big regrets was not serving this country in some form or fashion. And now that I've got the my business going, Operation Own Your Life, I feel like I can now serve those who have served us. So, even though I didn't, take the oath and serve this country in that particular way, I can absolutely, I mean, even more so, take it further and just help those who are in need, especially the veteran community. So that's one piece of it for sure. And then,
were you going to be an Army Ranger, or were you just going to join the Army and your friend was going to be the Ranger?
I was going all the way, dude. I was going Ranger school. I don't think I would have been in the Ranger Battalion. Probably would have gone National Guard. And I live in Indiana, so it's a heavy National Guard area, but probably would have been part of that. I have no doubt I would have gone to airborne school and Ranger school and all that good stuff. So I've always had an eye for that kind of like tip of the spear type stuff.
I can bet there's something there to unpack that. To your 20s, you can tell me if I'm wrong here or off base, but probably, because I can feel it for myself in other areas, not with the military, but that somehow not accepting that challenge, somehow you probably always felt less than what you were capable of, and probably always had some ceiling on your head that was artificial based on that you told yourself so long ago that you weren't someone that joined the Army.
Absolutely, dude. It's guilt. Ultimately, I think is what it is, and I lived with it for a while. I've come to accept it now, but that was definitely something that was with me. And my best friend in high school, he's still my best friend today. He was actually the best man at my wedding. So, and he's still in. So I think he's got 22 years in. He's a command sergeant major, doing big things. And he tells me, he's like, dude, you would have been awesome. You would have been an awesome leader of men. And I'm like, hey, I love hearing that, but I didn't go that path, but I appreciate it. But this is how I feel like, this is the way that I can now give back, man, in my own way and try to impact as many, veterans as I possibly can. So
it's kind of funny. I never thought about it when we've talked before. Like, we're exactly the opposite. You had your dare to be great moment to go all in towards something big, and you didn't take it. I just wanted to join the Air Force to be good at computers. And then somehow the Marine Corps came into my life, and I went towards something that was super crazy for me, for my point in my life, only because I didn't have the balls to tell them no.
Absolutely, man. It's a crazy dichotomy we have.
Yeah. And it's also interesting of how even though your life path took a different path, it still ended at the same spot on the other side, that there's a world where you could have been doing this exact same thing had you even served the military too.
It is, man. And you know what? I do feel like I'm a patriot at heart, man. Like I do. I love this country. I love anything, all branches of the military. And
UP, red, white, and blue.
Yeah, exactly.
So go ahead and unpack what it is that your book is going to try to deliver to veterans when they were going to read it.
Sure. So the book is called School of Grit, and it's not necessarily a book that's geared, 100% towards the veteran community. It's geared towards anybody. And so it's based on my life, at least the beginning of it. And when I look back at my life, things just kind of came easy, whether it was getting good enough grades in high school, not having to study your butt off, to pass, things like that. Did I apply myself in high school? Probably not, but I didn't have to. I had that aptitude. And I'm not going to get into the argument of whether you're born with that or you do have to do some sort of studying to get there. That's for a whole other topic. But I look at that. I looked at my family life. So I'm the oldest of four. And I had a great upbringing. My parents are still married today. We have a very loving family, and family comes first, and will always come first with me. It's something I learned from both of my parents. So, I never had to experience, divorce or growing up in quote unquote like a broken household, things like that. Health wise, I've always been healthy. Actually, just about everybody in my family has been blessed. We have had some issues just here recently. But what I'm getting at is I never really felt like I knew what I was truly capable of, right? Like things had come kind of easy to me. Like, I went high school, then went to college, got through college. I had trouble getting jobs when I graduated. But I circumvented that, grew past that. And then, I had some really good careers and still have a really great career going in the higher education space, which I really like. But when I was 35, I was just staring at myself in the mirror, and I couldn't answer a question, man. And the question, the voice that was speaking to me was, I think it was God. And I'm a spiritual person. I don't go to church probably as often as I should, but I am spiritual. I do believe in God. And the voice I heard was, you're not pushing yourself. You're capable of more. And I'm like, well, what is it? What should I do? And I happened to, that day I was on the computer, saw a video on YouTube. I just stumbled upon it, and it was this company called Seal Fit by Commander Mark Devine. So he runs it out of California. And Seal Fit is it's a program that teaches physical fitness, but also mental toughness as well. They have a program called Unbeatable Mind. And man, the video just like spoke to me. I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna sign up for that. And
Are you normally the kind of guy that just randomly signed up for stuff like that?
I will. Like, I'm the type of person, if something's speaking to me right then and there, I'm just gonna take action right there. I'm not gonna care. I'm gonna go after it. And that's something my wife actually just recently told me. She's like, you know what I love about you? And I was like, is this a loaded question? Or
is this a setup?
Yeah. She's like, when you get inspired, you jump in with both feet and you don't care. And if there's a wall, you're either going to go around it, above it, or through it. Like, that's just you. And I was like, thanks. I really appreciate hearing that. So long story short, was looking into the Seal Fit piece, and then they had another video, and you could actually still Google it, I think, to this day. If you type in like Seal Fit coaches and look it up, it'll bring up something called Kokoro Camp. Okay. And I didn't even know what Kokoro meant, but Kokoro means, I believe it's a Japanese term, but it's the blending of your heart and mind into action is what Kokoro means.
It's like some samurai stuff, right there.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to like some samurai days. And what Kokoro Camp does is it's modeled off of Navy SEAL Hell Week, which is typically, I think it's like a week. It's like 120 hours straight with zero sleep. This is a very step down version, but it's open to civilians, and it's 50 hours, actually over 50 hours straight of just nonstop physical and mental beatdowns, we'll just say, with a purpose. I mean, they all have lessons behind them. And I saw the video, and I still remember it to this day. It was Mark Devine on there, and he said, rejoice in adversity. He's like, rejoice in adversity, right? And I'm like, okay. He's like, how do we grow as human beings? It's through adversity. And dude, that was like the biggest light bulb that ever went off of my head. I was like, I haven't faced enough adversity in my life, just because of what I was telling you earlier. Like, my life had come relatively easy. I mean, it wasn't always peaches and roses, but overall, when you hear other people talk about their childhood growing up, I was never beat as a kid. My parents were both married, very loving household, great home values. Like, I didn't have that.
I feel like success finds people faster that had more adversity growing, assuming that they can break free from their upbringing. That's something. If you can break free, like Tony Robbins, all of the greats, they all came from even Oprah comes from nothing.
They all do, right? Like, so the most successful people often come from some of the most adverse situations, if they can break free, which is a big point. Because what that adversity does, man, it builds that muscle in between your ears, man, which is the most important muscle. It's that mental toughness piece. So I pulled the trigger, and my wife thought I was flipping nuts. I don't know if I can cuss on this podcast. That's why I use flipping. So But I pulled the trigger, man. And so long story short, went through Kokoro camp. I was class 38 and ended up graduating. I think we had 50 people start. We lost half the class. I was one of the oldest at the time, one of the tallest. I was 35. They were calling me grandpa. Pretty funny.
Which probably just like in your head, like I'm going to make this. I'm going to finish to the end because they were egging you on.
For sure. So I just, that weekend, literally, I felt like in that weekend, because that was the most adverse experience I still have had to in my life. But what that did was I felt like I lived out like a decade's worth of experience just in those 2 days, man. Because you kind of went through like all the highs and lows of life, from like losing people, which nobody, God forbid, died. But people did quit, some of your friends that you made while we're there, to just, continuously getting beat down to wanting to quit. I mean, I didn't just breeze through it, dude. I wanted to quit all the time, man. It sucked. It was horrible. It was terrible conditions. But something happens, man, when you kind of meet yourself for the first time, you really find out what you're made of. So yeah, that's what my book, School of Grit, is all about. It takes you through my experience in Kokoro camp. It'll take you through each evolution that I went through during those 50 plus hours. Then I tell you the lessons that the Navy SEALs were teaching us along the way. Because it wasn't like real buds. I do want to make that distinction. Like I do not want to be a Navy SEAL. So let's just get that straight right now. And it was probably just a little bitty taste, of what buds could possibly be like. But what it did, man, just the impact it made for me, it was just incredible. So I learned a ton of those lessons, like I said, like a decade's worth of lessons just in those short 50 hours. And then I take it a step further, man, in the book, and I apply it to everyday life. So whether it's raising kids, being a husband, working at a job, I apply those. So I think that's really the piece that'll resonate with the veteran community, since y'all have been through some sort of, boot camp, some sort of style of that, and maybe even further, right? Depending on what schools you may or may not have gone to, is just, that grit that you build in those particular schools, and how you can apply that to life, right? Because you get trained up when you go in the military, right? They train you for that particular job. But when you come home, and especially if you're transitioning out, there's not a whole lot of training out there to be a dad that I've seen. We know there's certain communities that exist, like Larry Hagner's Dad's Edge group, which I'll drop, which has made a tremendous, impact on me. But think about how many people are out there that don't know that even exists, Yep. So I think that's the part of the book that's really going to resonate with the veteran community. It's just how that all applies to civilian life.
And there's a part that you were unpacking there that our common friend in the Alliance, he taught me this, that to rephrase kind of, and I didn't really have PTSD. So this, when he described it like this, it really helped frame it in a different way, that instead of like PTSD, it's really more like post-traumatic growth disorder. Like you just experience 50 years of life experiences in sometimes 10 minutes. And it's really trying to unpack all of that growth. And it is really like you just learn how to lose a friend, which isn't something maybe you learn till you're 40, or until you don't learn to be alone in your family or lose your family. If maybe you're the only one survived until you're really old, you don't know what it's like to have all your friends gone and you're 88 and all your friends that you knew have already passed. Those aren't things that you're supposed to learn when you're 22. And there's a lot. When you've talked to a veteran, is there a lesson with adversity and how to apply it that you've found most useful?
It's,
or a question that you ask a moment?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing I was thinking of right there is just that mindset that it can always be worse. And I'll give you an example. So one of my friends is a first sergeant in the National Guard here, and he was talking to a person on his team, that he leads, and his subordinate was wanting his opinion on life, basically. And what this subordinate had, like 4 Purple Hearts, had served, I don't know how many tours. It was just like 4 or 5. I mean, just has been through the ringer. Yet he's asking for help, right? Which is, so, to me, so beautiful. Asking your boss, right, for help, knowing that he hasn't seen as much quote unquote action as the other guy had. So that's where my mind immediately went, is just having that mentality of, no matter how bad it sucks right now, no matter what I'm feeling, no matter how gleam the outlook is, like, somebody has got it way worse than I do. And that gives you the fire to just keep going, I feel, a lot of times.
When you switch into the coaching business, there's something that you our mutual friend Larry Yash taught us, the desired end states. So unpack that a little bit of what desired end states is and how you use that in your coaching program.
Yeah, man. So shout out to Larry Yash. So yeah, desired end state, right? So it's critical. It's the first thing you should think of, in particular if you're a veteran looking to, maybe you're still in the military, but you're looking to reinvent yourself doing something else, which is totally cool. Or if you're in the military and you're looking to actually get out and actually get into civilian life, a lot of people will just run and get that first job that kind of comes their way, right? And then 6 months, a year into it, what happens? It's like, this isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. I'm having trouble relating to maybe coworkers at a particular company, things like that. So what a desired end state does is it basically gives you what your new mission is. So desired end state is a clear description of the environment that exists at the successful completion of the project or problem you're working on. So before, as human beings, it's totally natural. When we're presented with a problem, what do we start thinking of? We start thinking of how to solve that problem, right? Which isn't necessarily terrible, because you're going to need to think about that at some point. But if we can just take a step back and think about what the end goal is, like where we want to be. So what's the feeling and emotion that we want to experience? Like basically, like, what's your why? Like, Simon Sinek's deal with why, which is a fantastic book. And then more so than that, it's where do you want to go? And more importantly, too, where do you want to stay away from? So if we can nail that, we can come up with a clear mission for what you want to do. And that's going to craft your new purpose in life. Because that's what I see a lot is, in particular, I find this a lot with people who've been in just longer, right? Particularly people who've been in 20 years, even longer. They get out, they retire from the military, they got a nice little nest egg, right? They got the retirement, but it's like, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Yeah, you're at 40, now you got it.
Right? And it's like, hopefully you got a lot of life left. So it's like, what am I going to do? You don't have that purpose anymore. You don't have that mission. You don't even have that team anymore, that you're used to seeing day in, day out. And that's when it becomes scary. Kind of like what you were talking about, like being alone. It's just that sense of being alone. That's what we want to, that's what I try to help out with.
So part of when I first heard the desired end state, it sounded exactly what I needed. And it's one of the reasons why this podcast exists, is because Larry's wife, Ann, walked me through this exercise. And my desired end state was, at this point in life, I want to be a dad more than anything. So I need to create a life that gets me closer to that. So starting a dad podcast was the best way to facilitate that. And for me, it really helped. I never had a lack of ideas of where I wanted to do outside of my day job of a side hustle. So it was always, how do you pick the right one? They were all good from my point of view. They were all equally valid. And they were all, I'm a kind of a Swiss Army knife. So I like doing a lot of different things. I'm a little bit drunk on curiosity. So that made me good and have perspective in a lot of areas, but then it just gets me overwhelmed. And this desired end state cut through all of that. And there was only one idea left that fit the mold. So, and it really paints your picture. The other part that I liked about the process was when you get to the desired end state mentally, when you're trying to describe it, you will physically describe what would happen if you don't get there. Am I saying that right? I feel like there's another way they say it.
Yes. Yeah, it's basically it's what you want to stay away from. So it's like,
and it's like the doom and gloom of it. Like you're really going, what's at stake if this desired end state? It could be divorce. It could be your kids don't know you. Your kids abandon you. These are the worst things that could happen, which is on the opposite side of that desired end state if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's a great point. I tend to start with the negative first. What happens if you don't achieve it, and keep peeling back the onion, and eventually I can get to some pretty crazy stuff. You know, I know it did for me. Like, wow, I'm going to be depressed or have severe anxiety, or, you know,
or you were going to be that classic laying on your deathbed meeting the Brad Ritter that could have existed. Like that's the best way I've heard describe the devil. Like the devil wins when you see the person you could have become on your deathbed.
Dude, I love that, man. I'm letting that sink in because I love what you just said right there.
You haven't heard that before?
No, I don't think I have. Not put like that.
Yeah, it's not mine. It's from Napoleon Hill's The Devil's. Oh, I can't think of the full title of the book, but Napoleon Hill was a secret book that he wrote in the 1920s that never got released and didn't get released by his family until 2011 because they thought it was so controversial. And if you don't know Napoleon Hill, he's the author of Think and Grow Rich and what's the other one? Influence Friends? No. Something along the lines of influencing people. And this book is based on a conversation that he made up with the devil, that he had a conversation of how the world works. And he wrote it in this book. And he wrote that like the devil wins when you're lying on your deathbed and you get to meet the version of yourself that you could have become. Like I hear that playing in my head over and over multiple times a week of starving the fear, doing things that scare the hell out of me because honestly, it's really about painting that picture of what that looks like, me lying on my deathbed and seeing that version of Ben Killoy walking by that scares the hell out of me even more. So it's like outweighing the fear on one side. It's like, that scares me more than whatever I'm doing now. So I'm going to do this.
Love it, dude. Have you read David Goggins' book or listened to his audiobook?
I haven't, but it's been coming on my radar like 3 or 4 times between the community that we're in. It's getting it back up there. Because that guy's got it. I've heard he's a Navy SEAL as well, and he went through like what sounds like almost hell, literally, of like forging the iron in the forge of the hottest furnace.
His whole life was hell, which is interesting, and I won't go too far into it, but it's one of my favorite. Get the audiobook too; it's better because he talk. It's like a podcast. It's like this. It's like a podcast interview while someone else is reading the book. It's fantastic.
I've never heard it done like that.
It's something similar about that, and I can't remember what chapter it is, but something to the extent of, you know, when he goes to heaven, or hopefully you go to heaven, right? But so if you're up there and you know God's talking to you, it's like we'll show you this highlight reel of your life and all the stuff that you could have achieved, right? And it's like, okay, did you do all this stuff, or did you not embrace the suck? Did you not starve the fear? Did you, you know, all that stuff we can say, and did you just kind of live a just quote unquote normal sheltered life? And he's like, I hope I get up there and God's like, you shattered all my expectations, because that's coming from God, right? Because you just I know you gotta know his background and his story. I mean, it's incredible. He speaks to everything from, you know, from being the only black kid in school to being obese. The dude weighed 300 pounds and had to lose 100 pounds in like 3 or 4 months to even try out to be a Navy SEAL. And then he went through BUD/S like 3 times. And that's just that piece. He went to Ranger School and ran ultra marathons and just all sorts of cool stuff. But it's fantastic read, man. But when you were telling me that about Napoleon Hill, I was like, interesting, because
it's like the opposite way to explain it.
Yeah, it's kind of opposite, because this one comes from like you're in heaven and they're showing you this highlight reel of your life and how awesome, you know, you could have been. And it's like, okay, well, did you actually do that? Or did you get close to it? Or were you not even close? Were you so far off the mark, like, I don't think we're going to let you in or something? You know, I don't know if that's the direction it was going, but it was interesting in the book.
I listened to Christian radio on the way to work, and there's a song, and I'm going to murder the name. I can't even think of the title of it, but there's a verse in the song and they're talking about like, you have all these things wrong in the world. There's crime, there's rape, there's murder everywhere. Why don't you do something about it, God? And the reverse responds like, I did. I created you.
Right there.
Yeah, it's the same kind of idea. Like I created you to freaking fix all these problems, and or not to fix all of them, but I created with you with the unique purpose to go out into the world to fix some portion of it.
And it's, I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but this is where I'm going to go with it after that. I totally believe that. And I think it's a very small percentage of human beings that are terrible people and should be, locked up or whatever. I think people for the most part are good and they want to help. So you just got to be vulnerable enough to open up, put the armor down. This is what the veterans a lot about, is putting that armor down, and that's done through trust. And it's amazing what happens when someone's willing to have a real conversation with you, man, like we're doing now. So
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
So I can imagine if you're telling a veteran to put the armor down by vulnerability, then you have an equally vulnerable story to lead with. What vulnerable story could you share with us and pull the armor down as an example?
That's a good question, dude. So that is exactly what I do. And that's a way that I try to, bring that wall down as quickly as possible, is just telling them, how messed up, my life has been in one aspect or another. So I primarily work with veteran dads. That's the group that I primarily work with. And obviously, as the name would state, a dad means you have children. So, I was a terrible dad up until, probably 3 years ago, I'd say, which is when I met, Larry Hagner from the Dad's Edge group, our mutual friend. And, other people might not say, oh, you weren't that bad, my family, but because they knew me on the outside, but they weren't,
Facebook approved Brad Ritter.
You don't know what's that? Sorry.
The Facebook approved Brad Ritter.
The Facebook approved Brad Ritter looked great. And that's kind of what I talked about in my book was, on the outside, everything was good, but on the inside, I knew I could be better. I just felt like I was a shitty dad. And a lot of it was just because I was very selfish, man. It was all about me and it wasn't about them. And then, joining a group, which is, that takes a lot of, trust to join an online community and open up to people.
We joke about it, but we both went last year to a random place in St. Louis to meet a bunch of random dads that we met on the internet. But it's true.
And it was one of the most emotionally charged meetings I'd ever encountered. It was hard to even explain, but it was for like all the right reasons, but I was just emotionally drained from that weekend. And where I was going with that is with the power of technology and like Zoom platforms like we're on right now and whatnot, it's there is actually safety and distance. You know what I mean? So like I'm not physically in this interview room, or like if I was going to see a therapist or something and I'm in the doctor's office on their couch.
Yeah. We're in each other's personal zone.
Right, man. We're out of that, but we can see each other through video. And what I find is, in particular guys, dude, they'll open up, man. Once those walls go down, and it's amazing the conversations that happen and appear. So
there was something I learned at this summit we went to last year together that Jason McKenzie shared, and I reshared it with him, that it's impacted my life in more ways than he can count, and even I can count on my hand, of the power of vulnerability and going first. Like the world is literally waiting for someone to tell their story first, to give other people permission to, one, feel that they're not alone, and two, to share their story to help lift up someone else. Like it's almost like a domino effect, but it literally takes like a domino, one domino to start the chain of effect of vulnerability at levels that you can't even really understand. And what our community that we're part of often teaches me is that it doesn't have to be a clandestine, horrible story. I shared a simple story about not having friends, and the amount of people that came up to me almost in tears because I shared a simple story about me not having a lot of friends in my life. That was a simple story to me, but to someone else, I gave them permission to breathe, and that your heart can start beating.
How'd that make you feel, man, when they came up to you?
It was validating for me, and then it was even just, it made me feel empowered to go continue to keep repeating it. And that's what ultimately a lot of the emotional debt that we carry as veterans gets caught up in, is this one, you have this society shooting you that you shouldn't do all these things with your emotions. But at the same time, it's like you need to have an opposite George Day and just start doing the opposite of what people tell you to do with your emotions. Like, feel them, understand them, scream them out loud, get angry, punch something. Like, these are the things that help you move through an emotion. They're not meant to be bottled up and stored on a shelf. They're meant to be felt and understood. They're warning signs for something going on in our life, and we need to understand what they are.
It's probably one of my favorite episodes of Seinfeld, by the way.
It is. I use it often in I remember the moment our other mutual mentor, Vince Blagisi, put that in his book. And I remember reading that, and I was like, I had no idea he was a Seinfeld fan. Now I know why we get along so well.
What a great show, man. That's spot on.
So what desired end state have you created for yourself, if you were to read it out?
So I wish I had it. It's like a paragraph. I should have it committed to memory, but I actually have to pull it out, and you hit me on the spot. But I'll give you like the
give us the bridge version.
I'll give you the, you know what? I will I'll give you the bridge version right here. I think I actually have it. Yep. Bear with me. I have it saved in my desktop, so I'm on my computer.
At least it's handy.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. So this isn't the full desired end state, but this is more of like a like core values, like really speaking to like who I am as a person, because I'm a big believer that you got to know who you are first. Having a strong why is important, no question, but you're gonna need a bucket of whys through life. They're gonna change just depending on,
your season of life requires a different one. When your kids leave, you need a different why.
Exactly. So I have mine actually put on a picture of my family, which I absolutely love. And I have it hanging in my master bathroom. It's on our mirror. So I see it every morning. So when I'm brushing my teeth, I look up and it just reaffirms what I'm doing. So here we go. This is word for word. So
okay.
It's I honor my family by having the courage to step outside my comfort zone and rejoice in adversity. I grow daily through self-discipline and seek to evolve as a husband, father, son, brother, and friend. I live a healthy lifestyle and push my perceived limits in order to test my will and prove what's possible. I seek out the fun in life and find the humor in any situation. My name is Brad Ritter.
I love that,
man.
It's good.
That's what I wake up to every morning, man. That's at the heart of it, man. That's what it's all about, is me. And I like putting that last piece in there, humor. I try to make, when it's sucking and you just don't want to be there or something, I try to get through a lot of things with humor and just walk through life with a smile on my face, man. Right?
You're talking about the I am Brad Ritter?
That's right. I am Brad Ritter.
I think the other part, whether you consciously know it or not, is whatever you're dealing with, it also helps own it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, funny story. So the first summit that was last year, somehow coming out of it, I got known as giving good hugs. Like, they were really good hugs. And so then I became this guy that gave good hugs, and everybody I met up with always joke about the hugs. I've really just owned it. And so now at this summit, like I was given like extra strong hugs just because that's who I was. And, I was on one podcast this past winter, and the host asked me for a rapper name. And I was like, I really don't have a rapper name, but I was like, I could go with Big Hugger B. That works. So like part of it is I am Ben Cloy. I am a guy that gives big hugs, and I don't really care what people think because it's part of me. And I like what you ended there with, because on your shittiest day, you can remember I am Brad Ritter, and it comes in a complete package.
It does. It does, man. That's so cool. And you know what the hugging just reminded me of too? Not to go completely off topic, but I feel like
It's all on topic.
We're just gonna go. And this is something I learned with the group we're in, is when it comes to hugs, you know, when we hug our children, and again, this was something that I changed, but going back when I considered myself like a shitty dad, if I gave my kids a hug, it was okay, pat them, I'm done.
Checkbox.
Right. And I've completely reversed that. And I hold on until they let go. And dude, it could be minutes. But man, that's the most precious time to me. That's the most precious time you can spend with your kids, man. It's just like embracing each other. And
have you ever read Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters?
I've heard of the book, man. I haven't read it. No.
Your daughter's age, so you're at the age where it'd probably scary. I read it when my daughter was like 3, so it wasn't fully scaring me, but it did scare me. And I repeated it often in the podcast that hugging your daughter, there's a 60% less chance of having sex by the age of 12, just by hugging your daughter.
Okay.
Because by investing in that connection with you, your masculine energy, they won't go out into the world to seek it. Because if you don't give it, they will go out into the world to seek it from the first person.
Man, that's awesome. Who wrote that book?
You had to put me on the spot. Meg Meeker.
Okay.
Meg Meeker, she has a son book and a father. You reminded me of a story of this. So I've been dropping my kids off at summer school. This week was the first day, and my son started crying on Monday. And it was in like the last very moment. And he was doing fine right then. And he's pretty emotional 4-year-old boy. And I was really proud of myself looking back, because I did exactly what I felt like I should do. I just held him and let him cry and just rubbed his back. And it maybe like 30 seconds, he stopped crying and then looked me in the eye and said, "When are you picking me up?" And I was like, "Right before lunchtime." And it was good. And he's cried every day this week so far, but every day it's been getting less. And I'm not judging. I'm telling them to stop that emotion. I'm just being there with him in that moment to reaffirm what he's feeling.
Yeah, dude, that's beautiful. Again, I had that all wrong years ago. I would have been the, hey,
stop crying.
Stop fucking crying. You know, just turn it off. And I don't do that anymore. It's an emotion, and dude, you handled that brilliantly. So kudos, man, to you.
Could have been differently on any other day, but somehow this week it's been good. It could be part of maybe I'm just building up or I'm more calm before the storm, because my wife's going to China this next coming week, and single dad's going to be all week from Friday to Saturday, just me and 3 kids. So I'm taking vacation off for the whole week. So that's kind of like the insurance policy that I survive.
That's good.
That I don't have like too many pressures in my life, that I can just show up and be dad and work through. So
China for a week. Wow.
School district pays for it to go over there, and kind of like, it's like a teacher exchange kind of. She teaches something over there, and then they teach her also for different examples for what stuff they do.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something that, again, like looking at the similarities between civilian life and military life being gone, right? So, and the military, you could be gone at whatever, for schools, being deployed, what have you. And in the civilian life, like for us, I know you travel, I travel as well, man. That is totally taxing on a family.
Mm-hmm. And it's easy, especially for dads in 2019 in American society, to just prioritize their career and to not recognize what was needed. That Bob Martin, the guy that I was telling you about, I just interviewed, he got a divorce when he was 34, and his role as a father, and we talked about it in the podcast, and it was really powerful. He saw his role as a father as being the provider, that you could work 12 hours a day because that meant he was just providing more. But the other categories of where he was supposed to show up were bankrupt, and it all came crashing down.
It's like I've heard you say multiple times on your podcast, how do kids spell love?
Time.
That's right, brother. That's what they're not going to remember. How much you made, what your W-2 looked like, all the gifts you got. They're going to remember, were you there? ultimately, or were you not?
So as we wrap up the episode, let's leave dads with some action items with creating a desired end state. What's the shortest process to start one, or where do you begin to try to start putting the puzzles together of figuring out where it's supposed to go in the end?
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question. So there's all sorts of tools out there that you can use, but the ultimate thing is, and I would encourage, sitting down with somebody to actually craft this. It doesn't have to be, quote unquote, like a coach or whatever. Just, somebody who has your best interests at heart. And I'd go through. Really, it's 3 steps to the process. So when you're looking at your desired end state, what you're going to want to do, number one, is you're going to want to share your background of history. Right? We got to have that common concept of operations. So if I'm sitting down with someone and it's the first time I've met them, I can't possibly craft, your future life without knowing where you've been and what your history is and your background. So we're going to dig deep into that, man. Like that generally takes the most amount of time. I've had it take 2 hours before with certain individuals, just because there's been a lot to unpack there. But what comes out of that is just, it's so emotionally charged, but that's where we start. And then the second piece where we'll go from that is once I'm on a level playing field and I know what your background is and what your history has been, we're going to look at obligations and commitments. So we're going to look at, okay, what's your current state? What are you obligated to do? What are you committed to? What are your non-negotiables? And then like, what do you have available? And that can be looked at as like time, money. Are you, subject matter expert at something you could get paid for, whatever that might be. I mean, there's different questions we'll go through on that. And then the last piece is we kind of tie that all together and we look at the future. And it's like, where do you want to go and what do you want to stay away from? Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. And we usually start negative. That way we can end positive. So we'll start negative and really do a deep dive, sort of like it's like one of those vision type exercises where you almost like close your eyes and somebody's asking you. You keep going down that track. Like, okay, if XYZ happens, how would it affect this? And then how would it affect that? And then you get into some pretty scary stuff, man. Honestly, it usually ends up being like you're going to be, depressed or divorced, or your kids are going to disown you, or you could be suicidal. I mean, that's the type of level we're trying to get to, because ultimately that is where you could possibly go if you don't take care of the obligations and commitments piece. But then we do that mind shift and we get away from the negative. And I usually tell people to take a break, because when you've been caught in that negative setting for a while, it takes a minute to kind of shift gears. And then we go totally positive. It's like, all right, what happens if we accomplish this, man? What does this open up? What future does that allow? And that's where you get like the really good visions of where you want to go. And then I help them wordsmith all that into a paragraph similar to kind of what I had just shared with you. And then that becomes their desired end state. And I mean, that can change obviously over time and with certain scenarios. But what that does is once you have that desired end state, now you can start crafting different, courses of action to get there. And working through, any potential contingencies you can think of and so on and so forth. So there you go, man.
And that's pretty much exactly the process I followed to get to mine for the Dad podcast. And I can imagine that the downside for a veteran, and I often talk about how when you're in that, when you have the wall up and you're not being vulnerable, you're not talking about what's going on in your head, that voice gets louder and louder to the point where it's the only voice you can hear. And it generally only comes to one conclusion, that your family would be better without you. So you almost want to get them as fast as possible to that reality and move them past that, like to the ludicrousy of that answer. Because a lot of times no one ever gets the point past that question and answer because they've already taken their own life.
Absolutely. And it's, if you're you're out in the field, you've got your mission, right? There's all these tactics and strategies that go along with it, but that's your mission. And that's exactly what the desired end state is. It's your new mission, man. You don't want to be a Ronin, which is a samurai without a master, right? You don't want to be floating around with no purpose. It just leads to bad things, especially if you are alone and don't have friends and nobody to talk to.
So luckily, I'm an organized podcaster, and I actually found my desired end state that I crafted. Positive.
All right, dude. Lay it on me, man.
At least I'm pretty sure these were the final copies. These are close to it. So the negative side, we'll start with the negative. To avoid an environment where I feel like I'm not accepted, that I'm not worthy, and I don't trust myself, so that I don't surrender control of my life over to my ego and lose my wife, ensuring that I make the most of the time that I've been given. On the positive side, so that's my worst case scenario. The positive side is to create an environment where I feel hopeful, to give the gift of hope to other families and dads, because I have achieved personal freedom, enabling me to ultimately provide the gift of experiences and travel to my family.
That's awesome, brother. Love it.
I hadn't read it in a while yet, so it's nice to remind myself.
You do. I mean, it's good to bring it out, constantly remind yourself, and you should absolutely feel, emotionally charged with it. And to be honest, if you don't, I actually had to go through the process a couple of times because I'd get there and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess it sounds okay, but it's like, that's not what you want. You want to be able to like close your eyes, put your hand over your heart or whatever. And it's like, man, are you feeling this?
Is this your Pledge of Allegiance?
Right. Is this like, are you feeling this? Or are you just kind of like, whatever. I want to get this exercise over with.
Yeah. I like that. Do you have any favorite story that you'd like to share of a positive outcome of someone that crafted this life other than yourself as a spitting billboard of this? Is there a story that you want to share how someone's moved their life forward by having this?
Yeah, I mean, I got a buddy who's getting ready to transition out of the military. He's been in almost 20 years, and I was like, hey, dude, I want to do this with you, because I know how powerful it is, and it's given him just a new kind of like it's a new purpose, because before, 20 years in, you've had that purpose. You've had, as I say, no one joins the military to be alone and make their own rules. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when you get out, yeah, it's a little bit different. But since then he's gone to work in a corporate gig, but it's around a charity, which is near and dear to his heart. And I mean, it's beautiful. Now I don't know if it's all gonna, if he's gonna retire from there or what, but at least for now, man, he feels like he's doing, passionate work, things he was actually put on this earth to do. Man, that's ultimately what it's all about.
When we had Andy Stumpf on the podcast, he said, even as a Navy SEAL, it's so hard to get caught up in the uniform, the identity of what people look at you as a Navy SEAL. But when he started thinking of it just as a job, it was a number. And it wasn't about something that by wearing that uniform he became. It really just gave him the tools to really become the person that he was inside versus the person that was attached on the outside. And we've been talking really heavily in the podcast lately about legacy, and that many veterans get caught up on what that legacy of their service meant. Like, why did I die and why did he survive? And why did I get to come home and my brothers didn't? And in reality, that it's because we never switched from our legacy of our service and focused on the legacy of our family. Like, everything in the military is a fact. It's over. It's in the past. There's not a single thing or thought that you have that allows it to change. But the one thing where all those tools and experiences and growth, as we talked about, happen is in life with your family. Like, we had a podcast episode, Reese Lauder. He was on the podcast, and he was a combat correspondent in Afghanistan and Iraq and saw a lot of things over there as well. And he come home, and during his transition process, his wife was diagnosed with brain cancer. And we were talking on the podcast that in some ways, a little bit of what his experience in Iraq gave him the growth that he needed to go through one of the hardest things he could go through. and he's my age, 34, around 34, I want to say. And like, without that extra growth, it could have been something that destroyed him. So it wasn't something that held him back. It really allowed him to walk through something that is the most scary thing you can think of, is losing your wife.
Absolutely, dude.
Before your life has even got started.
Absolutely. It's that whole adversity piece, man. I go back to, and when you're in, if you're in the military, it's all adversity, or a lot of it is, right? It's being shoved at you all day, every day, especially if you're deployed, which is how you can get those decades worth of mental toughness, emotional resiliency, whatever you want to call it, to be able to use that to go into life and just kick ass, man, and help people. I mean, that's really what it's all about to me, is service to others. So,
and even Andy Stumpf, he was telling, like, he'd like to get to a point where he's not known as a Navy SEAL. Like, he's created so much of an identity of who he is outside and value of what he is to the universe, that people think of him as Andy Stumpf versus Andy Stumpf, the Navy SEAL that flew 40,000 feet in a wingsuit to raise money for the Navy SEALs. Like, that's all part of that identity, but he wants to be something different than that someday.
Absolutely, man.
And he was starved of fear a little bit, and he moved his family to Montana, back to where his wife was. He wanted to get outside the normal world that he was living in, and he decided to create a new one. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned for getting outside of your life to see where you need to take it.
It's funny how when for me, when I experience that, it's always when I'm around nature. I don't know if it's something about nature, man, just doesn't.
I agree. It's why veterans are always going fishing and in the mountains to work through their issues.
Yeah. And I'm a big fisherman. That's my favorite hobby. And
someday I will be. I have a horrible story that I've been fishing multiple times, and I'm 34 and I've never caught a fish.
You never caught one?
I have never caught a fish. It's
you got a
stain in my existence that I don't spend enough energy to get rid of, but I have been legitimately fishing with all the right stuff theoretically, and it just hasn't worked in my favor. When I catch one, it'll be like $1 million, but I'm not proud to say it, but I'm a 34-year-old person who's been fishing and never caught a fish.
Dude, call me. We'll fix that right away.
I've had a couple of people in the dad's group say that, like,
I
just want to drive up and get you on the boat.
That's right.
So after the SEAL Fit, did you connect, or do you go on any type of regular nature hikes or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So after SEAL Fit, it's it was a weird scenario, because the question Mark Devine posted to my class that graduated right afterwards, he's like, "What's next? Because you got to keep pushing." So, all right, you had this awesome, audacious goal. You worked your butt off to get it, which, I mean, I trained hard for, 4 to 5 months to achieve it. And then you achieve it, and now what? There's something called, like, the arrival fallacy. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And it's
just recently I've heard it explained.
Yeah, and it's an interesting concept. And
it's almost like one that the American dream is built on, because you actually never get there, because it's just consumerism tells you should keep buying more. Exactly.
So the idea is just to keep pushing. So yeah, I still absolutely get into nature. I'm fortunate enough, my parents live on a lake about 30 minutes south of here, so I can easily attain that. And I take my kids fishing, and they've caught lots of fish, which I'm sure will put a smile on your face as I'm looking at you. Because
my kids haven't caught one either, and they've been a few times.
So absolutely, I still
stain on our existence.
Yeah, I still like to sign up for something that scares me once a year. Something sort of epic. So this year, and usually in the physical sense, I find peace through suffering. As crazy as that sounds, it's just true. Like, I love a gnarly workout, like give me a 45-minute hit type workout where I'm just
smoked and exhausted.
Yeah, where you're so gassed, like literally all you can concentrate is breathing. Like that's like meditation to me. I don't know. That's where I get it. But so anyway, long story short, two friends two friends of mine who are in the Guard. We're gonna do a Go Ruck Star Course. It's a 50 mile race, which scares the crap out of me, dude, because the longest I've ever been on a ruck is easily under half that distance. So
is this you and Dan?
What's that?
Is this you and Dan or someone else?
No, someone else. I think Dan's gonna be there though.
I was gonna say it sounds right up his alley.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure Dan's gonna be there. I think Jason McKenzie's gonna be there too. If I'm not mistaken, but it's in Indianapolis, so that's my big like scary physical one. But even way bigger than that. Going back to that question of, and this is something I talk about in my book, School of Grit, of what's next. Operation Own Your Life is next. That's what I feel like I've been here to do and put here to do, is to take this knowledge, take what I'm good at, which is coaching and helping people, and I want to apply that to the veteran community. So that's my next big, scary, audacious goal. Because I'm not gonna lie, dude, I'm a civilian. I've never served, so I had to get over like, oh man, how am I gonna talk to veterans, man? I don't have that experience. Like, who's gonna listen to me? How are they gonna trust me? You start getting all these negative emotions and negative self-doubt in your head. And we all get it, no matter what we're doing, especially if it's something new. But man, you just gotta put that stuff aside, and you just gotta do it, man. You just got get out there and do it. Put yourself out there.
And I can imagine when you talk about what's next, that's a question that's never really asked to veterans. We have the process the military gives us, which is, oh, what's next is a job. Oh, what's next is a family. And then what's next is a depression that follows because you end up in a world that you don't actually recognize. And I can imagine a lot of veterans hearing this right now, probably just feeling like the life is in neutral. Like they lived and did all of these epic things, and it's not that their life just no longer is in drive.
Right. Absolutely right. Needs a new direction, man. Gotta get out of that stalled zone, because there's more than just your service. There's a lot more.
Yeah, and there's other ways to challenge you mentally and physically as well. There's a story that I don't know whether you'll laugh or cry about it, but I'll tell you anyhow. I don't think I've told it on the podcast yet. So going back to Okinawa, it's 2004. I just got on the island. I was never good at running, so I already had that against me. It's like breathing underwater over there. They make you wear a white shirt when you first get there to distinguish that you just got to the island. So if you drop, they react a little bit differently. And our platoon sergeant was a poster board Marine, and we're running. And I had pretty much known my Marine Corps career as the guy that was always falling out of formation during the running. So I'd always had this idea of giving up in the formation. That was always something already there in my head. And at the top of his lungs, he turns back and he says, "Kaloy, are you weak?" Thinking he's going to motivate me. Me instinctively, without even thinking about it, I just answer, "Yes, sir." And I remember this moment like it was yesterday. It's a little bit, it used to be like a plague. Like it was kind of like, that was the default state of, yes, I am weak. What do you want me to do about it? Accept it. But at the same time, I remember that moment as kind of like my dare to be great moment, to move past that to, it'll never happen. But if I were to replay that, like getting to a point where, and I'm positive I'm there now. I've worked through my stuff enough to say that, like, if he yelled it back, I would say yes, or no, sir, I'm not weak. But that moment plays around in my head over and over.
It's amazing, right? Hey, I suck at running too, so it's all good.
But like the Marine Corps is the big giant running club. So when you're not good at running, everybody just kind of like should you into guilting that you just suck kind of. It's hard not to feel like you suck. And even like towards the very end, I got my very best 3-minute mile was 22 minutes when everybody else is usually, when they put their effort in, they can get 20. Like I put my best effort in going to the gym and aerobics during lunchtime. And the best I got was 22-minute run and 10 pull-ups. That was the max I could got, which equated to my gym fear when I got out. Like I had this idea that I did give it my all and I got nowhere. I didn't get nowhere, but I didn't get to where I needed to go, the finish line of what the perfect PFT in the Marine Corps was. And that fear of failure scared me for almost 10 years. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until Chris Hughes pretty much held my hand through the gym and just gave me the workouts, and I just needed to show up, that took a huge pile of fear. There wasn't of, am I doing it wrong or right? I just need to show up and do it. So, and I think that's what you've got with the coaching, is that so much of what we need to deal with in life is overwhelming. And there are processes that work, but you can't hold the flashlight and walk at the same time. You need that person in front of you. And I often describe what Chris Hughes for me was like, it's like the yellow brick road in the land of Oz, but he was laying brick by brick in front of me as I was walking. I didn't have to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then those bricks just told me where to go.
Perfect, man. That's a great analogy.
And I've equated that a couple different times for coaching. And even when I give other people advice about going to the gym, I'm like, if you've got a big pile of fear, you need to outsource some of that, because it makes the burden of trying to walk through it a lot less. And it becomes almost just easy. And now after a year, I've gone to the gym 4 times a week now.
That's outstanding, man.
And I think the what next for me is a marathon. I've never done a marathon, and I'm scared of running. I hate running. So I ultimately feel like that tells me that I need to do it more and get through this suck and the limiting belief that I'm not a good runner. And I think it's more about training. And I found it in the oddest places. So on days where I was maybe overly tired, because I go to the gym at 5 a.m, and there's days I'll drag my ass to the gym, but just not feel like doing the weights. I'll go on the treadmill. And because I hate running, I'll just walk on the treadmill really fast. And then there was another guy next to me. He pumps it up to like 12% incline. It looks funny. And I was like, I should try that. So I started doing that, and I would just walk at 12% incline for like 20 minutes. I could run really well after doing that. If I lowered it back down, sped it up, I could run a mile almost without really any of my legs shutting down or any. And I was like, I think I just need to train differently to prepare for it. So it really helped affirm that I just didn't apply the right process to get to where I wanted to go, or the result that I needed.
Yeah. If you keep doing the same things, you're going to get the same results.
And you have to really ask the question of what those conclusions are telling you and how those conclusions are driving your life. Like a conclusion that I'm not a good runner will drive my life to never do anything related to running.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, a lot of that's, fear-based, which, I mean, fear drives a lot of our choices. It can almost be argued it drives every choice we've made.
Yep.
The girl we ask out, to the job we interview for, to whatever. And I know Larry Yach, who we mentioned earlier, puts it really eloquently, that you have to realize fear and courage go hand in hand. And what he was meaning by telling me this is fear is simply an opportunity to show courage. So let me give you an example. So I don't like, are you afraid of snakes at all?
I absolutely hate it. My daughter loves them and wants me to read books all the time. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do
it. Perfect analogy here. So like, I'm not afraid of snakes. So if we're together and we're walking in nature and a snake goes by, or say one's coiled up, and I go and I pick it up, am I showing courage for me?
No, I think you're just doing something.
I'm not afraid of it. So It's no big deal. But if you, on the other hand, go pick up the snake, you're absolutely showing courage. So what Larry was trying to impress on me is, those who have the most fear also have the biggest opportunity to show the most courage as well. So it's just, it goes in that whole mindset of how you actually view it. Mm-hmm. Like talking about like, I'm just not good at running. Well, if you use Carol Dweck, who wrote the book Mindset, just add that one word, right? That begins with the letter Y. It's 3 letters. And that word's yet. I'm not good at running yet. You'll get there. So it's just changing it up.
And you hit something right on the head there. It's almost as our society conditions us to be more mediocre and to do less exciting things with our life, the capacity for fear increases almost. Like there's a greater quantity of it in our life that keeps us mediocre. It keeps us watching Netflix instead of doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never thought about this, so this is a fresh thought, but you could actually argue with the amount of fear people have in America for doing something purposeful with their life, which I would consider it an abundance, ginormous amount. I couldn't even extrapolate a number to it. Probably relationship to the national debt. If you switch that capacity to the amount of courage, often that's also what America is great at. Is people often will say Americans have some of the strongest courage when we are tested, like at 9/11. That was a very courageous time where people did things that scared them.
Yeah.
And it's almost a little bit like it's untapped potential in some ways, that like if you truly woke up America with the idea of fear, it's almost like when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor and woke a sleeping giant. That potential was there. They just poked the bear and it started moving. Like if America really tapped into the amount of fear that we're producing in our life, because we do have the freedom to do anything, but we have this so much fear, we could really do anything and be the Americans that we are on paper, at least.
Absolutely, man. Just control that. I mean, everybody has it. Everybody's scared of something. Just control it, right? Learn to control it.
I always describe it as a sword of two sides, one of fear and one of curiosity. That curiosity is my compass towards my passion, and that those will be the breadcrumbs to get me there. I skip the passion question because it's just too overwhelming most days. But the curiosity question I can deal with. I'm naturally curious about a lot of things. And the other side is fear. And that fear is the magnet that pulls me towards the greatest things in my life. The more something scares me, the more amazing something's on the other side of that. I would argue there's nothing amazing on the other side of holding a snake, though. But in general, in different scenarios, the more something scares you, like public speaking, literally there's something more amazing on that you can't even see. One of my very first Cloyisms was, if you're at the wall of fear, find the door and walk through because your destiny is on the other side.
It's awesome.
That was before any of this ever existed. So it's crazy how those long ago Cloyisms, that's probably like 2.5 years ago, I came up with that one, and how it still rings true today in my mission.
Absolutely, brother.
So, Brad, as we wrap up, where's the best place people get in contact with you? What kind of website, or is it email, or is it Facebook?
Yeah, so I am on Facebook. So just look up Brad Ritter. There could be a few of us, I guess, throughout the world, but hopefully you can find me there. I'm not incredibly active on Facebook. So the best way to get a hold of me is just email. So just send an email to brad@schoolofgrit.org. So that's brad@schoolofgrit.org. And I will have a landing page actually launching at the end of this month. And that's going to be schoolofgrit.org is there. So check it out when it's up and running. It'll have a link to the book and then a link to Operation Own Your Life as well.
All right. And I'll include your email address in the show notes so people can grab it quickly and get a message to you.
Awesome,
I've known Brad for 2.5 years now, I think, at least. And we're on similar missions. Our passions are going together, and I'm honored to call you a friend, Brad, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. And we didn't talk about coming home, but I am positive in a roundabout way, not talking about family, we broke through some of the barriers that prevent dads from coming home today.
Right on, brother. Hey, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you for having me on the podcast. If there's anything I can do to help out your audience, man, I'd love to, because that's what I'm here to do, man.
All right. Well, you have a great night, Brad, and thank you for coming again, coming for on the show. That's a wrap. And thank you for listening to today's show, and I really hope you enjoyed it. The lifeblood of any new podcast are the reviews. If you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on iTunes, I would really appreciate it, and you will help us get the message out to even more military veteran dads. As John Maxwell says, if there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. Dads, it's time to come home.